Welcome to Life is for Living. I'm Kylie Buckley and I'm here with David J. Riddell from Living Wisdom. David, I have a question for you. What is the difference between being centered and being self-centered?
The challenge of adolescence, to figure that one out. This is the teenager's challenge to get on their own 2 feet and to become convinced that basically they have worth, they have value, they're okay, without overbalancing into it's all about me.
Mhm.
It's all about me is really narcissism. It's all about me is the lifestyle of the person who is teetering on self-rejection. They are emotionally insecure. It's all about me is the self-focus that means they're trying to keep their head above drowning. They're trying to keep their head above water. There's a massive question mark over their worth and value in their own minds. This leads to emotional insecurity, and this leads to overcompensation on proving their worth and their value. And when it becomes all about me, everything becomes a Skype session. Everything becomes an ego journey. Certain political leaders come to mind. And it's a problem for people who are not quite sure of themselves because they did not achieve individuation as teenagers. In other words, they understood that they could be wrong, mistaken, they could sin and they could err. But regardless of that, they had an essential worth and an essential value that meant that they were worth forgiving, worth fighting for, worth supporting. Some people back themselves in a dilemma. Some people turn on themselves in a dilemma. And so that's why I say to folks, you've got to train your mind not to turn against you when your back's against the wall and you're failing, or you're rejected, or you're struggling, or you feel abandoned. You've got to make sure that your own mind says, hey, you're okay. Stand up, keep going, make progress, keep fighting, don't give up on yourself. And this basic I'm okay, even in the face of big people's rejection, means that you've actually got through individuation. You have a self-confidence that doesn't border on arrogance. You have a self-confidence that can still take correction. There is sufficient humility for that. But you have a self-confidence that means you don't abandon yourself when you've ballsed up and you've got it wrong. And that's what I call teaching your mind to be your friend. You must train your mind to back you up and support you without making you too arrogant to be corrected, without making you too proud to admit that you've stuffed up and it's your bad and you got it wrong.
Mhm.
So when you're humble enough to admit my bad, but your self-esteem is strong enough to say, but that's okay, I'll learn from it. You're in a good space. You have indeed individuated. People who have not yet individuated leave their worth in everybody else's hands. And so for them, life is a popularity contest, which they must win at all costs. And if they're not winning, they'll have to punish somebody. So you can see the insecure inheritance that is left behind in the wake of adolescents that don't actually manage to individuate. I hope all that makes sense. It's quite a headful, but it's very important, and every person faces this challenge at some time or other.
Yes. So, as a parent, then balancing that with your teenager, who at times, they expand the boundaries of what you would prefer and what you lay down. Um, what are some things that we could say or do to help them uh, not become the flip side of narcissistic, that it's all about you and stuff you, mum or dad, or the other side where they just do as you say? And become a bit of a mummy's girl or boy all their life, and they don't individuate. I suppose it's about having the door open to them when allowing them to stuff up and then having the door open to them. Is it about how, yeah.
Well, one of the first things I have to teach parents who get very confused on these issues is that acceptance of the child does not imply approval of all their behavior. They have to learn to accept the child without approving of everything they do.
Mhm.
You know the song "No, no, not my son John." My son John can do no wrong. We must avoid that trap at all costs. Uh, when a woman marries a man who believes that he can do no wrong, she won't be able to teach him, instruct him, correct him, or even appeal to him because he's oblivious to his faults. That's not the way to train an adolescent boy. So that balance of humility to take correction as well as reassurance that it's the behavior that's problematic, it's the beliefs that are wrong, it's not the spirit of the person. And if they can distinguish between the spirit of the child and the beliefs of the child, then they're halfway to home on that matter.
Yes, yes.
Not an
Okay.
easy thing to do, though, Kylie. Not an easy thing to do.
No, it's not. And I think it's difficult too nowadays with all the split families because you've got different values. I'm in that situation, and there's many like me where your ex-husband will have a value and then you have a value, and they can be poles apart. Uh, one allows one to do what they want and let them learn their own lessons, whereas for me, my example, I like to guide them and try to correct, which often you get the snub because, well, the other one allows it. Why not?
Well,
Can be
can they
confusing.
distinguish? Have you taught the child to distinguish between correction on the one hand and rejection on the other? It's important to
Mm.
distinguish the two, and many do not make this distinction. For them, any correction is interpreted by the brain as rejection, which must be fought, resisted, and rebelled against. And so the child learns to fear correction, and it results in an unhappy relationship between adolescent and parent. And that
Mm.
will then spill over into an unhappy relationship between husband and wife because, of course, they're still interpreting correction as if it were rejection.
Mhm. So would that be what you would call a fusion
Exactly.
mind? Yeah, where they can't individuate one from the other on its own.
Distinguish is a better word. They can't distinguish one from the other.
Right. Interesting. Okay. So you've got here in your notes, what will it take to convince you to live a proactive life rather than go on living in all out reaction to those around you?
Well, the reactive life is a crazy life. And I say that because a person who lives reactively is basically a puppet, and the chief influence in their life is a marionette, pulling strings left, right, and centre, which the reactive or codependent person is unable to resist. They are unable to say, look, I'm not having this conversation with you. They're unable to say, let's not go there, shall we? They're unable to say, you might want to think about what you just said and its impact on my trust in you. They're unable to ask a single empowering question because they don't know what they are. And all they do is react. They're insulted, they're outraged, they're indignant, they're angry, and basically they're not able to set up their own agenda. Their own agenda is constantly being set for them. And a reactive person is hard to live with. A reactive person escalates every conflict. A reactive person turns molehills into mountains, and there's no peace around a reactive person. There's peace emanating from anybody who can set their own agenda, and that way they keep their dignity and they have a sense of gravitas that immediately gives them mana and status around their peers. A woman with a mother who's proactive can maintain the respect of her husband and her children. A woman who's highly reactive to everything around her does not retain respect from husband and children,
Mhm.
and ditto for the father. I think dignity comes with proactivity, and codependency comes with reactionary. And it's not too difficult to work out who's who in this business.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, okay. So if you are reactive to things that are going around, I suppose it's the matter of them learning to, take a deep breath and just um, let a bit of time go by. I'm trying to think of skills here for those that jump on everything that they can jump on to react with.
Yes, it's quite helpful to say this is their issue. Does it have to become my issue? This
Yeah,
is their bandwagon. Do I need to jump on it? This is their agenda. Why am I making it my agenda? I choose not to have this conversation. I choose not to dwell on that issue. I am in charge of what I dwell on, and I don't want to dwell on that.
right. But if you're the person that is reactive, a way around that to help them, would it not be to also take time out, just relax, just go make a coffee and just take a step back?
Yes, that's good advice and it will help, but by itself, it's too behavioral to be permanent or to make lasting change. Underneath that choice to take time out, there must come a much deeper commitment not to allow other people to pull your strings. And the reason that many do not take the right path here is because they believe that to love somebody is to be responsible for that other person's beliefs and feelings and attitudes. And so they instantly get far too involved and hooked straight in. And I believe that a woman's beauty as a woman is partly due to her responsiveness and her willingness to love. Unfortunately, responsiveness, female responsiveness, has a shadow side, it has a dark side, and that responsiveness degenerates into reactiveness very, very quickly. And if a woman does not get on top of this, she will not be able to set her own agenda, and therefore she will not be able to retain the respect of those she loves. And that's a problem. And that's why a lot of men practice the sport of racking up a female to make sure they stay in charge or to make sure that they show their own emotional superiority or power. It's a problem for many partnerships between male and female.
Right. Excellent. Okay. Well,
Most females have some first-hand experience of what I'm saying, I think.
hmm, yeah, well, there's a lot there, a lot in that, what you've said today.
I fear I've overwhelmed you a little.
Yeah, you have a little bit. There's even things here that I haven't considered. What about, like you're saying, trust and things like that? Here's another question. It was probably another show, really. But if you've lost the trust through, you're talking about it earlier, what's a way that they could get that back with their siblings or mum or dad or children?
Such an important question, such a vital question, such a crisis point question. I do crisis point counseling, which means I bring people to that ultimatum, to that U-turn as quickly as I can. And that's why I have a reputation for radical results that are also very fast in terms of restoring relationships. I take them straight to that question, and my first admonition is don't guess how you can earn their trust back. Don't assume you know how you can earn their trust back. Ask them. Put them on the spot and just ask them. I know you've withdrawn from me. I know you've backed away. I know you don't trust me the way you used to. And I'm here to find out how I can rebuild that trust. I've tried to guess and I've probably failed. So please tell me, what do I need to do for you to reassess me?
Mm.
And then shut up. Be quiet. Stop talking. Give them time to think about that. Sometimes they'll simply obfuscate and put it off because you've taken them off guard. That was the last thing they ever thought you would ever ask because you always know best. So they can be in a little bit of shock, which means that you say, I'll give you time, I'll come back to you with that question. Or you might start learning something about yourself you never ever expected to learn. But ultimately, the aim of that question, Kylie, is always the same. It's to rebuild and restore communication and connection.
Mm.
And I know enough about women to know that connection is often their number one priority. I know enough about men that they will play their cards close to their chest when they're frightened or when they're under the gun. And so you've just got to be gentle and careful in this matter because a brother offended is harder to be won than a strong city with battlements. And you've got to tiptoe a little bit, but you do need to ask. And even if people can't answer that question, they always appreciate the fact that you cared enough to actually have the courageous conversation and ask. And
Mm.
that's the first icebreaker, isn't it? Just your willingness to care enough to ask, what do I need to do to rebuild your trust?
Mm. Excellent advice.
I
Thank you,
hope so.
David.
That's why you called me, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Excellent. Well, thanks, everybody. It's another session of Life is for Living with David Riddell.